Goatface Swilla, we are only 33 minutes and 57 seconds into a 3 hour and 2 minute interview. It's only going to get worse. So if you don't like it, go fuck yourself. Fuck off. Number 5.
Prison. So these are very important connections to keep in mind, is that even his musical career, such as it was, these references he got were underworld figures giving him connections that were also tied to the underworld. As far as the idea of Manson being this hapless failure as a musician, let's keep this in mind to set it in its correct context. Immediately after he gets out of prison in March of 1967, he has these connections with mafia nightclubs where he auditions in San Francisco. He's given this reference to Gary Stromberg, who was an up-and-coming music publicity director and, for a while, a producer at Uni Records, which was the new record company from Universal Studios, which was at the time the most powerful entertainment conglomerate in Los Angeles. So he had very good references, and he went to Stromberg in September of 1967, and through a guy named Russ Regan, who was the head of Uni Records, was given money to record immediately a demo tape at Gold Star Studios, which people who know something about the history of popular music would know Gold Star Studios is a legendary recording studio where the Beach Boys, Mamas and the Papas, Phil Spector, and countless other acts of the time recorded some of the most well-known masterpieces and hit songs of the 60s. So that is not somebody who was an undistinguished musician. He was immediately given an opportunity to record a demo tape at Gold Star Studios pretty much as soon as he got out of prison. So this connection didn't pan out for various other reasons, which I get into in my book. But he then moved to Topanga Canyon, Manson and a small circle of women that were forming around him at that time. Topanga Canyon is a very isolated and remote area in sort of near Malibu, and a very rural oasis in the urban decadence of Los Angeles. And in Topanga Canyon at that time, in a place called the Snake Pit, hippies and counterculture people that were sick of the urban environment were moving out there to live in nature to the degree that one can in the midst of Los Angeles. But it's a very beautiful rural area, like an island of peace in the midst of the noise of Los Angeles. So Manson was drawn there, and there was a club there that was called the Topanga Chorale. And there, the entire elite of the music industry went there to, so to speak, literally let their hair down. And Manson actually performed there with a short-lived band that he formed called the Milky Way.
Battery low.
Bobby Beausoleil, in the process of looking for musicians to play with this very short-lived band of his, which most people don't remember. But that means that it was, again, through his musical career, forming a band, that he met Bobby Beausoleil. Now, I don't know if your listeners are aware of the entire complex saga, but Beausoleil committed the first murder, which is in the legend considered to be the first of these Manson murders, which I think is a misnomer. So the important thing is to see, in his musical career, it's what leads him to encounter each member along the way of the dramatis personae that ended up being involved in the murders, if you follow that. So Bobby Beausoleil was friends with Gary Hinman, who was a small-time drug dealer and guitar teacher and musician in that area. And Gary Hinman was, as you may know, one of the first people to be murdered during this very complicated and still mysterious crime spree that occurred 2 years later. But he was a friend of Manson and Bobby Beausoleil, and they knew each other through their mutual musical interests. So now in the Topanga Canyon Corral, Manson encountered pretty much the entire cream of the crop of the LA rock industry. And, you know, he's told me many, many anecdotes about how well he knew all these people. You know, everyone he had met there, everyone from Linda Ronstadt, Buffalo Springfield, Spirit, many other major bands of the time. So he was a figure on the rock and roll scene, known to everybody, even in 1967 when he'd just been released from prison. And then they remained in Topanga Canyon on and off deeply into 1968 and 69, returning to it on and off. The major connection that was next needed, and again it ties music to the murders, was that Manson met Dennis Wilson, who was then the drummer of the Beach Boys, which at that time was one of the hugest rock bands in the world, second perhaps only to the Beatles at that time, and also in terms of cultural impact, you know, they influenced the Beatles influenced them. But the very important fact to bring up there is, you know, the legend that Manson was supposedly obsessed with the Beatles and that the murders were inspired by